Hey, David Brewster here with a new episode of Chordplay. This is the Chords of Giuffria, and I've had some requests to feature some of Giuffria's music, along with more Craig Goldie and also Lanny Cordola, too. We've looked at Craig before. I think that was the 3-for-all from a few years ago, and that was during his Dio years. And then this is the first time we've actually looked at Lanny Cordola's music. Definitely a great guitarist. And Giuffria formed in Washington, D.C. in 1982, and they only released 2 albums during their original run. They did record a 3rd album that was unreleased. And then eventually this band turned into House of Lords. So we're going to talk a little bit about their history kind of surrounding Greg Giuffria. But definitely if you're a Giuffria fan or an 80s rock guitar fan, this episode's totally for you. So there's an interesting behind the scenes history with Greg Giuffria and also Gene Simmons from Kiss. And Greg Giuffria originally was in the band Angel. And Angel lasted from 1975 until around 1980. And Gene Simmons famously saw them in a club and helped them get a Casablanca, record deal, which was the same, record label that Kiss had. So Angel formed. They lasted about 5 years. They split up. Then they reformed, and Greg kind of formed his namesake band, Giuffria. And then Giuffria had their run, a couple albums. They left their record label and signed with Gene Simmons. I think Gene had like Simmons MCA or something like that. And then that's when they turned into House of Lords. So it's an interesting band, and kind of noticing that connection between Greg Giuffria and Gene Simmons is really interesting. So in the guitar department in Giuffria's music, Craig Goldie was the original guitarist, and he appears on their first, self-titled album, which is on the wall right there. And then he left and joined forces with Dio, and that's when Lanny Cordola came in. And then Lanny played on Silk and Steel and the 3rd album that was unreleased. And then whenever the band kind of flipped and turned into House of Lords, Lanny was the guitarist during that time too. Definitely 2 dynamite guitarists, and there's some really cool, parts from both these players in this episode. So the chord-based and rhythm guitar examples in this episode came from 3 Giuffria-related albums. That includes their self-titled debut, Silk and Steel, and also their unreleased, 3rd album, which you can actually find that here on YouTube. And I checked it out. I'd never heard it before. And I think there are 3 or 4 songs from the 3rd Giuffria album that also were re-recorded, for House of Lords' first album. So it's interesting to kind of notice the differences and different songs and stuff like that. But anyway, if you're a Giuffria fan or a Craig Goldie or Lanny Cordola fan, buckle up. Here we go. So at the opening, that's the song Radio from the album Silk and Steel, and it's something like this. Like that. So it starts with a big slide there on that C on the 20th fret low E. And you got this E riff, single notes. So it's based off that low E, and you're playing with that E and D note. And right there, you're going to do this kind of quick hammer-on movement, between the 5th and 7th fret on the low E, A, and D string. Like that. And you're grabbing that A, B, D, E, G, and A right there. And then right there, you're going to do the same riff, but the root note's going to change from E, and you're going to actually change that root note to C right there. So right there, you're doing that C, E to D, and then right there, that C, E, C, and then right here, you're going to do this A, B, D, E, A, B, like that. So it's kind of mimicking that first, hammer-on riff, but doing it like that. So the first two riffs, the first half, and start it again, do the first part again. And then right here, so you're going to basically change that to C right there. And then right there, instead of doing that other fill we did, he does a harmonic fill. So it's like 3 G's on the G string there on the 12th fret, and then 7th fret on the B to 7th fret on the G. And then it changes into this, you know, kind of power chord riff. So that first part, and then right here, it's basically an E flat 6 to E5, and then it's a C flat 5 to C power chord. And then it's a D6 to D5. So I love the way he's kind of mixing and matching the chords there, because he's basically doing this. That's really cool, that flat 6 to the power chord, the flat 5 to the power chord, and then that 6 to the power chord. And then right there, it basically ends on a C sus2. And you just kind of let that ring. Great riff, and I really dig that kind of twisted chord part happening there. Really cool. Next up's Don't Tear Me Down. This came from the first Giuffria album. So this is Craig Goldie on guitar, and about 43 seconds into the song, you'll hear this. Something like that. So it actually starts with this D over F sharp and then a ringing G5 right there. And then you hear the C sharp to D octave. And then right there, he's basically playing a D octave like that, the open D and that 7th fret, you know, fretted right there. And that's what you hear him kind of pedaling after that octave. So after that, right there, go to a B minor bar chord, back to that G5, and then do that C sharp to D octave thing again. Now this next pass, I'm hearing like a more kind of pronounced D over F sharp. I think he's adding more of the chord on top right there. And then that ringing G5 again. And then you hear this really aggressive, it's all played off the low E open right there, but that E power chord, low E, you know, kind of hit, that D power chord, low E hit, and then that G over D right there. Like that. It's kind of a simple riff, but I like it, and it's cool having some Craig Goldie kind of sneaking in there. Next up's the song Dance. This is from the first Giuffria album, so we're still hitting some Craig Goldie here, and something like this. Something like that. One more time. So start with that C power chord right there. And he's actually hitting like an implied C sharp 11 right there. He's grabbing that F sharp like that. So that F sharp to G, F sharp to E, and then a single D at the end. And you're all playing that, you're playing that all off with that C note right there too. Like that. And then go to D right there, D5. And then here you're playing with the sus4 to D major right there. And then that E to D single notes. And then basically after that, go down to a B power chord right there and let that ring. And he starts doing this plucky, you know, kind of two-note thing. And right there he goes back to that C power chord again. Next up's the song Turn Me On. This is also from the first Giuffria album, so we're still hitting some Craig Goldie here, like this. Something like that. So it's an A riff and it's real busy, and he's hitting this A power chord, the open A, and then so right there it's the open D, E to that G, all in the D string, and then that partial C to partial B, and he kind of dips his bar on that B, and then that B to C, and right back to that A power chord again. Right there, do that same hammer on, but then it's a partial D to a partial C, and then it's D major to D sus4, like that. Last time right there, end on an F power chord at the end, and that's a busy, active riff, and I like it. It's kind of traditional with those kind of partial chords, based off an A, but cool, busy riff from Craig Goldie, a good one. Next up's Lethal Lover. This came from the album Silk and Steel, so we're back on Lanny Cordola, and it's interesting because we're using those kind of partial, A chords that we just saw in Turn Me On with Craig Goldie, but now it's Lanny's turn, and he's doing... something like that. So it starts A power chord, start pedaling that open A string, and he starts doing this. So there's kind of a melodic thing happening with those partial, kind of double stops. Right? Like that partial B to C, back to B to A, and then you're going to basically do that B to C up to D. And then right there, E to F, back to E. So it's all partial chords played off that D and G string with the open A, like that. Start it again. The second time through it right there, there's a weird fill, and I'm hearing like this G note, and then I'm actually tapping that E note and then bending behind it. Like if you listen to the song, there's a weird, I don't know what that is. That's what I came up with the almost like a Steve Vai kind of fill. Go right back to the riff again. Last time just basically end up on an E power chord right there. Cool riff. Okay, next up's the song Slip of the Tongue, and this actually came from the Giuffria's third album, which was unreleased, and then they did re-record this when they became House of Lords. But I don't think Lanny did this crazy intervallic tapping thing. In the Giuffria III version, he did like in the beginning of it right there. And there's some like sound effects and stuff, and then he starts doing this like tapped chordal thing, which is really cool. But this first thing, which is from the Giuffria III album, he's doing this. It's really like E5, kind of like a glorified E5, because he's doing E, B, E, and then he's tapping B. So it's really just E5 notes, but like that. Right? Really cool, like intervallic, almost sounds like Buckethead or something right there. Like that, really cool lick. It's also a good one for your pinky, kind of stretching up there. But it's all basically symmetrical, so we're just moving that along the string so that, open 7, 12, and tapping that 19 is going to basically remain on every string, because we're doing... And you're going to basically do that kind of double tap on every string. Like that. Really cool lick, and you're just coming down that 12 and 7, you know, with your fret hand, and you're tapping those 19s up there. Now there's some like sound effects and stuff after that, and then you hear this chordal tapping thing like this. That's really unusual. It's also kind of hard to get it like perfectly in tune, but you're basically doing the open D and G and then hammering on to that little partial, you know, A5, that E and A note, and then you're tapping an octave higher, that kind of partial A5, and there's a chord progression happening there. You know, that partial A, partial C, partial A, partial G, and you're tapping that while you're also kind of doing that open string kind of fretted part with your left hand. So it's definitely two-handed. And he's kind of got this kind of odd rhythm, and the drums are kind of accenting what he's doing too. And then the first time he basically hits that A power chord and then slides it up, and then do all that again. Like the second time he just basically stops on that A. But that's a really unusual guitar part, and I kind of enjoyed listening to the Giuffria version and then also checking out the House of Lords version. And there's a music video for that, and you can actually see Lanny kind of doing what I was demonstrating right there. And last but not least is the song Golden Town. This also came from the third unreleased Giuffria album, and this didn't appear on the House of Lords album, so this is just kind of a standalone song that only appears on that unreleased album. A really cool kind of Van Halen vibe, you know, chord riff. Cool stuff. Check this out. Something like that. So it's C sus4 to C major right there in the beginning. And then it's B flat. And then we had this kind of thing earlier. It's B flat to implied sharp 11 like that. And right back into that C sus4 to C major again. And this is really crafty. It's like an E flat. So it's like an E flat triad right there. And then, so it's like E flat to F, but then right there it kind of goes to like an F sus4 and then ends on D. So that's an unusual arrangement of notes. Like that. And that takes you right back into that C riff, the C sus4 to C major. And that last time, this is really crafty. It's like the inside part of an F major chord. You know, don't play the full bar, just the inside part like that. So it's like a F over C. And then take that, move it up basically to A flat right there. And you hear him kind of hit that A flat. It's like the inside part of that A flat major bar chord. And right back into that C riff again. Alright, that's going to wrap this episode of Chordplay with this look at the chords of Giuffria. Definitely a very interesting and overlooked band. A lot of people don't even realize this band existed, or they just think of Craig Goldie and they kind of associate him with Dio, or they associate Lanny Cordola with House of Lords, and it's like, no, both those players actually, you know, kind of fleshed out a lot of things in Giuffria's music. And it's an interesting kind of stepping stone band, you know, Angel into Giuffria, into House of Lords, and just kind of noticing what they did, you know. And there were some interesting, kind of unusual or different, you know, ideas at play in this episode. And this is just a sample. They have a lot of other music that's really, you know, noteworthy and impressive. But definitely this is Chordplay. I'm not really worried about hits. I'm worried about chords, you know, and finding some different ways of using chords or performing them. And definitely this episode, you know, hit that formula or whatever. So leave some feedback and comments. Please subscribe to Night Lessons, and I'll be back before you know it with more content and material. Thank you.